But it turned out well because I got to go to Tallahassee Community College. And that, what a great place that was. I was there for 27 years. I'm in the Hall of Fame there. Matter of fact, black.
Hey.
And so I went from the worst paid community college in the state of Florida to the best. Our president wanted that reputation as being the man who pays his faculty the most. So we played, and I was there about 5 years coaching, and I had the opportunity. They said they'd pay half my salary if I wanted to go back to school. I said, that sounds too good to be true. And so I went back to Florida State. I had been to Stetson College on a Ford Foundation scholarship. And then I went to Rollins College and finished up a master's degree. And so I had a master's degree, and I was able to, at Tallahassee, then to go to Florida State to go ahead and complete my work. And then, of course, after I got the PhD, I had an opportunity to go out to the well-renowned Cooper Clinic out in North Dallas, where I did some postgraduate work. Let's see. One little quick little story. Because I was also along the way learned to write somehow, and people would buy it. I wrote for magazines when I was going to college, and mostly because of the experience I had in baseball. So I would write about 3 articles, either the Scholastic Coach or the Athletic Journal, and they would pay me $30 and $45, and I thought that was big money. So I kept writing. So when I got to Mainland High School, I found out I was going to Rollins as a pitching coach. I didn't have enough confidence in myself, and I'm thinking, am I ready for that major college? Because Rollins played really great baseball. So I used to spend my afternoons going over to DeLand, Florida, with home of the Stetson team, and I'd sit up in the stands and I'd watch Doc Johnson, the old grumpy old fella, and he would put his team through the paces, and I would watch and see what I could learn. Well, about the 3rd day I was there, he quits practice and he walks over to me. He says, "Okay, who the devil are you?" And I said, I'm the coach over at Mainland High School. I said, I've got a good job next year, and I'm be coaching Kenny Salmon. Now, Kenny Salmon was the best pitcher in Florida. He was ready to have a big bonus in those days, and so I didn't want to ruin his career or his chance for that bonus. So I was kind of reluctant. I was not quite as sure of myself as I wanted to be. And so Johnson says, well, I haven't got enough time to give you, but follow me over here and we'll talk along the way. So I followed him. He didn't talk. He was just a grumpy old guy, wanted to get rid of me. So he says, follow me to my office. So I went down to the office. And in there, he says, sit over there a minute. He says, I've got an article for you. And it's about pitching. It'll probably help you. And so he couldn't find it on his desk, so he gets on his hands and knees and goes underneath the desk and this pile of Scholastic Coach magazines. And so he pulls it out, he's thumbed through it, and he finally says, this is it. He says, learn this and you'll be all right. And I looked at him and I said, I wrote that. He says, get the hell out of my office. So it gave me some confidence, and I said, well, maybe I am ready. And I must have done all right at Rollins. Okay, let's see what I'm forgetting here. I did a lot of work in my professional organization, Florida Association of Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. And usually at the convention would be about 1,500 people. And they'd hold it usually at a central locale like Orlando. And so there'd be some kind of a model program to go see. There'd be lecturers, and you'd have, it was divided into 3 sections. There'd be elementary school, junior high school, and college, senior high school. And so I started going to the college section, and before it was over, 15 years later, I was elected chairman of the college section 3 times. Another honor that I had came later when a Bible study teacher of mine recommended me to the governor of Florida. And I became the chairman of the Council on Fitness and Sports in Florida. And we had a senior person, I forgot his title, but the legislature gave us $300,000 a year. And instead of spending the money, this fellow who's a bright guy, in fact, he started Athletic Attic. If you ever heard of that, he sold it for $5 million. He started in Gainesville. And so he didn't know me very well, but I guess I was recommended to him. And he appointed me chairman of the Governor's Commission. So Sandra and I went to several meetings down there, and I held that position for 3 years. So that's the professional organization that I just admired so much. In fact, I was told I was the youngest person ever nominated to be the president of the association. It came down to 2 people. You're looking at the loser. I should mention too, my writing. I began to write because my head was so full of information about baseball. I began to put that, to write that way. Later, I was at a convention over in Missouri someplace, and I met Jake. Remember the article, Body by Jake? Mm-hmm. I met Jake. He was a dud. He liked to get rich off the stuff he was selling, but he didn't know much about physical education. So I came home, and he said to me, he says, I can tell you're decently informed. He says, why don't you write an article? That began my career for 22 years, I wrote an article on health and fitness, and it appeared in probably maybe 5 different newspapers. I wrote for the local paper up here when I first got here, but they were in such financial stress that I didn't continue there. But I've been writing all my life. Now, every now and then I'll write a children's story. I enjoy doing that more than anything else. Oh, let's see. I should mention cardiac rehabilitation because at one time in my career, Sandra was working for the premier heart specialist in Florida. His name was Orson Smith. And Orson wanted to start a rehab clinic. And I guess because, I don't think through Sandra, maybe, he probably saw my picture in the paper, but anyhow, he called me. He told me what he wanted to do. And he said, I want you to come down here and work with a nurse. We're going to open a clinic. And so we did that. We started one. In fact, it's still going at Tallahassee Memorial Hospital, cardiac rehab unit. And I worked there for, what did you say, about 3 or 4 years? I think it was a short time, and then we moved up to another college, and I left that position, but I had a lot of good memories there at the rehab center. We only worked with 6 people at a time, and I knew each one of them top to bottom. I could tell from the expression of their face, if they were getting too much stress or not. And I had a scale which told me I could go up to somebody and say, what's your stress level? And they give me a number. And so, and each number meant something, like number 1 was, that's a stroll in the park. And number 7 was, I'm about to die, I can't finish this. And so they just give me a number, and I would make the adjustments if it was necessary. I want to talk about a couple of my favorite students, because I love teaching. Let's start with Margaret. Margaret was about 65 years old, and she, in World War II, she was a very respected nurse. In fact, she was made supervisor of the nurses of the Pacific. And she was known by all the generals, terrific reputation, wonderful woman. And she came to me, I was in my 40s, and she came to me, and I'm to counsel her. Well, at least I could do her academic counseling, that's about all. In the conversation one day, she told me that she had a note from Vatican City, and she said the Pope wanted to see her. I said, Martha, you met the Pope? He says, yeah, we sat for quite a while, she says, and I counseled him. And I said, "You Councilman Walker?" She said, "Oh, he's just a farm boy."
Yeah.
And she had a nice conversation with their correspondent. She was in my office because she wanted a degree in music. And she was a songwriter. And she had many things already put to lyrics, put to music. And she would write it and send it to Nashville. Well, she said, "I'm tired of that." She said, "I'm moving to Nashville." Now, this woman was almost 70 years of age. She's just getting a career started. So, amazing woman. And those are the kind of students that I remember. Now next one is very different. His name, I forgot his first name, I think it was John. But John's mom and dad were intellectuals. One taught at Brown College, another was a lawyer. And Joe wanted no part of that. In fact, anything that they defined as his role in life, he would do just the opposite. He got involved with drugs. He never used drugs. But he said there's a wonderful market, okay, if you want to get rich. Finally, he made contacts down in Colombia. He had, before it was over, he had a 38-foot boat going back and forth at night between Colombia and here. He had more money than he would know what to do with it. Money was not even significant anymore. He had so much of it. One day I mentioned that down the road I'd like to have my own physical fitness gym. He says, "Where do you want it? I'll buy it for you." I said, "Listen, you're still in the penitentiary. How come you?" He said, "The feds didn't find all my money." He was in Tallahassee, and he was walking up and gonna fly somewhere, and the feds stepped up behind and put a gun in his neck. He said, and they said, "Get off of this thing right now," and he was found guilty. He was in the federal prison there at Tallahassee, but Joe would come into he got special work permission to be off the facility, and he would take a course at the community college. And so I found him in one of my classes, and he would sit in the back of the class, and he was about 28 years old, and he would listen to everything I said. And he liked the parts, when I would put down the parents and talked about eliminating the influence of the parents in all institutions and finding out what you want to do with your life and see if you can make a career doing it. And so he liked the conversation, so he came in my office often. Afterwards, he put his feet up on the desk there and he sat back and we were going to talk. And I enjoyed that. He challenged me all the time. He says, "You use too much hyperbole." I said, "You're probably right." And I said, "But I'm trying to make a point." I said, how would you do it?" And so we had some good discussions. And he remains just someone that stands out of my mind as a great mind. He could be successful at anything he wanted to do. And I kept talking to him about not going back with your same friends once you finally get out of this prison environment. I don't know what became of Joe. The next I guess I call him a student. I was in the office one day and the phone rang. And the lady on the other end says, "Will you hold for Jesse Burke?" I said, "Uh-oh, it's one of these dang politicians from down the road there." And Jesse came on the phone. He says, "I saw your class advertised. I was teaching a course called Fitness After 50. He says, "I'm after 50. He says, I may need your class." He says, "What's it cost?" And I said, "It's free. Come at 12 o'clock. Because we used to offer classes from 12 to 2, community come in free of charge. And so in the conversation we got to laughing. We must have talked for an hour and we just laughed at each other. And finally he says, "I'm an athlete." I said, "We could use a few athletes in this class." So he said, "Okay." So he comes, and the first time I see Jesse, he's about 5'9" and about 245. I said, "Jesse, you said you were an athlete." He says, "I'm a sumo wrestler," he says. And he and I turned out to be fishing buddies, good friends, but I got so many stories about him. He told me he always wanted to be a coach. So I told him, "Well, you're my assistant." Well, Jesse really had a distinguished career in government. He was in charge of vocational education for the state of Florida. Later, they gave him the job of the Commerce Department head. And he traveled all over Europe trying to bring commerce to Florida. But he always wanted to portray himself as being this country punkin, someone who really didn't know what was going on. And he used to tell me, he says, I came from L.A. And I said, you know you did. He says, well, L.A.'s in lower Alabama, isn't it? So he would come into the little classroom there, and a big husky guy, and one day a woman came in and she was kind of fearful of all of what was going on. She put her head in the door and she looked, and she didn't know whether to back out or not. And so here comes Jesse. Jesse puts that big arm around her shoulder. He says, honey, he says, 2 weeks from now you look just like me. And I ran to get the woman because she was leaving. So I said to Jesse one time, how much do you weigh, Jesse? He said, I don't know. He said, I was on one of those machines one time where you put the penny in and a little card comes out and it tells you what you weigh. He says, my card said, 1 at a time, please. That was Jesse. One day, he was a speaker down in Daytona Beach at the Princess Isena.